The first time he noticed it, the change was subtle, almost imperceptible. A strange stiffness in his left hind leg, a small patch of skin near his foot that no longer felt soft and yielding, but hard, like river stone. He was just a frog, a simple creature of the swamp, and this was a mystery beyond his understanding. He tried to flex his toes, but the patch resisted, cold and unmoving. A creeping dread, colder than the deepest mud, settled in his heart. The swamp, his home, his world, was a symphony of life, a constant hum of buzzing insects and croaking neighbors. But now, a new, dissonant note had joined the chorus, the silent, petrifying creep of stone across his own body. Days turned into weeks, and the stony affliction spread. It crawled up his leg, a slow, relentless tide of gray. The vibrant green of his skin gave way to a mottled, mineral hardness. Hopping became a lopsided, awkward affair. His once powerful leaps were reduced to clumsy thuds. The other frogs in the swamp started to notice. They would stare, their wide eyes full of a mixture of pity and fear, before quickly looking away. He was becoming an outcast, a living gargoyle in a world of soft, wet life. He spent his days hiding beneath the broad leaves of lily pads, watching his reflection in the water. The frog staring back was a stranger, a grotesque mosaic of flesh and stone. The fear was a constant companion, a lump in his throat that never went away. What was happening to him? Was this a curse, a disease? Or something far, far worse than the rain-eater came? It wasn't a creature of flesh and blood, but a presence, a shimmering heat that descended upon the swamp. It arrived on a wind that carried no scent of rain, only the dry, dusty smell of thirst. The air grew thick, heavy, and still. The usual chorus of the swamp began to falter, the insects grew quiet, the birds flew elsewhere. The rain-eater was a void, an emptiness that drank the world. It pulled the moisture from the leaves, leaving them curled and brown. It sucked the coolness from the air, replacing it with a suffocating, dry heat. The very sky seemed to pale, the vibrant blue fading to a washed-out, hazy gray. The sun, once a source of warmth and life, became a merciless eye in the sky, baking the world below. The water level in the swamp began to drop at an alarming rate. What was once a sprawling, interconnected network of pools and streams became a series of isolated puddles. The rich, dark mud at the edges began to bake, first turning a light brown, then cracking into a mosaic of dry, hard plates. The lily pads, once lush green platters floating on the surface, wilted and sank into the receding water. The familiar, comforting smell of damp earth and decaying leaves was replaced by the acrid scent of dust and decay. The lifeblood of the swamp was being drained away, and with it, the hope of all who lived there. The rain-eater was insatiable, its thirst endless. It drank, and the world shriveled under its silent, relentless assault. The frog, with his petrified leg, felt the change more acutely than most. The dry air seemed to abrade his remaining soft skin, and the heat was a constant, oppressive weight. He watched as the other frogs, desperate and panicked, made foolish choices. Some tried to migrate, hopping across the baking, cracked earth, only to be found later, mummified by the sun. Others stayed in the shrinking puddles, fighting over the last dregs of water until the puddles vanished completely, leaving them exposed and helpless. But our frog, the stone frog, had a different idea. It was an instinct, ancient and deep, a memory buried in his very being. He knew he couldn't outrun the rain-eater, and he couldn't fight it. He had to outlast it. He began to dig. It was agonizing work. His stony leg was a useless anchor, a dead weight he had to drag behind him. He used his good legs and his front arms, clawing at the drying mud. At first, it was soft enough, but as he dug deeper, it grew firmer, more resistant. He dug past the tangled roots of dying reeds and the empty shells of snails. He pushed himself downward, driven by a primal urge to escape the searing heat and the thirsty air. Each push, each scrape of his claws was a monumental effort. His body screamed in protest, his muscles ached, but the instinct was stronger than the pain. He was digging for his life, burrowing into the memory of water, seeking a refuge deep within the heart of the wounded earth. Deeper and deeper he went into the cool, damp darkness. Down here, the rain eater's influence was weaker. The earth still held a memory of moisture, a faint, precious coolness that soothed his raw skin. He carved out a small chamber for himself, just big enough to turn around in, and then he began the final, desperate part of his plan. He sealed the entrance to his burrow with a plug of mud, creating a tiny, self-contained world. And he began to drink. He absorbed the remaining moisture from the soil around him, drawing it into his body. He became a living canteen, a biological vessel. His body swelled, his skin stretching taut. It was an uncomfortable, bloating sensation, but he knew it was his only chance. He was storing the swamp's last tears within himself, hoarding the precious liquid against the long, dry season he knew was coming. Time lost all meaning in his dark, subterranean prison. There was no day, no night, only the constant, pressing dark and the slow, rhythmic beat of his own heart. He existed in a state of torpor, a deep, patient waiting. Above, the world had become a wasteland. The swamp was gone, replaced by a cracked, barren desert. The rain eater reigned supreme, having drunk every last drop of surface moisture. It had won, or so it seemed, but its victory was a hollow one. With nothing left to consume, the rain eater began to starve. The shimmering heat in the air began to thin, the oppressive presence started to fade. A being made of thirst cannot survive in a world with nothing left to drink. Slowly, silently, the rain eater began to dissipate, its essence scattering on the dry winds, its power undone by its own insatiable appetite. One day, a new sensation reached the frog in his burrow. A deep, resonant vibration through the earth. A sound he hadn't heard in what felt like a lifetime. Thump, thump, thump. It was the sound of raindrops, heavy and fat, striking the parched ground above. The rain had returned. The sky, for so long a pale, empty gray, had filled with dark, heavy clouds, and now it was weeping, washing the world clean. The frog felt a surge of triumphant joy. He had done it. He had survived. He pushed his way out of his burrow, bursting through the muddy seal into a world being reborn. The air was cool and sweet with the smell of wet earth. The cracked ground was already turning dark as it drank in the life-giving water. He stood, blinking in the dim light, a solitary figure in the revitalized landscape. He had outlasted the rain eater, but his victory came at a terrible price. As his body, swollen with stored water, began to return to its normal size, a sharp, cracking sound echoed in the sudden silence between raindrops. He looked down at his own body. The stone, which had once been confined to his leg, had spread. The process of storing and releasing so much water had put an incredible strain on his strange, afflicted form. New fissures, sharp and deep, had appeared across his back and sides, and in the depths of these new cracks, the gravestone was visible. He had saved himself from the drought, but in doing so, he had hastened his own petrification. He was more stone now than frog, a living statue, a monument to survival, forever marked by the battle he had won. He let out a long, croaking sigh, a sound that was half relief and half sorrow as the rain continued to fall. Thank you for joining us on this journey. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more tales from the wild and unexpected corners of imagination. See you next time.